I still remember that night as if it happened yesterday. The smell of roasted chicken filled the kitchen, the candles flickered softly, and the laughter of my grandchildren echoed faintly from the living room. It should have been a warm family dinner, the kind I used to dream about when my son was little. But that night, something broke inside me. My son Michael sat at the head of the table. He was scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. His wife Lisa was setting the plates. The kids were giggling, fighting over who would get the bigger piece of chicken. I was just happy to be there. Invisible perhaps, but content. I leaned forward, smiling, and said softly, "Michael, do you remember how your father used to carve the turkey on Sundays? He'd always..." Before I could finish, his voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Mom, just shut up, please." The table went silent. Even the kids froze. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of my heart breaking inside my chest. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Maybe he was joking, maybe he was tired. But when I looked into his eyes, my boy's eyes, I saw nothing but irritation. I swallowed hard and tried to smile. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to interrupt." He didn't even look up. He just muttered, "You always do," and went back to his phone. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, her fork clinking against her plate. The children stared at me with wide, uncertain eyes, like they'd just witnessed something sacred being broken. I sat there, my hands trembling on my lap. My heart ached not because of the words, but because I realized something far worse. I no longer belonged there. Later that evening after dinner, I stood by the window in the guest room. The house was quiet now. My reflection in the glass looked older than ever. Tired eyes, silver hair falling loose, a lifetime of love that had nowhere left to go. How could my own son speak to me like that? The same little boy who used to run to me after every scraped knee. Who once cried when I left for work, who once said, "Mom, you're my whole world." Now, I was just a nuisance at his dinner table. I sat on the edge of the bed and I cried. Not loudly. No, I'd done enough of that in life. These were the quiet tears that burned from the inside. And as I wiped them away, something shifted in me. It was small, like the crack of dawn through the blinds, but it was real. I thought to myself, if I don't leave now, I'll die here. Not physically, but piece by piece. So I made a decision. A decision I never thought a mother would ever have to make. The next morning before anyone woke up, I packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, my wallet, my husband's old photo, and my car keys. When I reached for the keys on the counter, my hand trembled. The sound of metal against wood felt louder than thunder in that silent kitchen. I looked around one last time. At the framed family photos, the toys on the floor, the flowers I'd planted outside the window. Every piece of that home held a memory of love. And now, it felt like a museum of everything I'd lost. As I opened the door to leave, I whispered softly, "Goodbye, Michael. I hope one day you remember who I was before you stopped seeing me." I stepped out into the cold morning air. Felt freeing. Painful but freeing. I started the car, took one deep breath, and drove away. No plan, no destination. Just the quiet road and the sound of my own heart, finally beating for me again. Tell me honestly, my dear. If your own child ever spoke to you like that, after everything you did for them, would you stay? Or would you walk away too? That drive became the beginning of something I didn't expect. Not just an escape, but a journey back to myself. The world outside that house felt brighter than it had in years. The morning sun peeked over the hills, lighting up the sky in gold. And for the first time in a long time, I rolled down the window and let the wind touch my face. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew one thing for sure. I was never going back. You know, when you've lived your whole life for someone else, the moment you finally drive away, it doesn't feel like freedom. Feels like grief. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me. Gray, quiet, empty. My old car hummed like it was whispering, "Are you sure, Helen? Are you really leaving your son behind?" I didn't answer. I just kept driving. The radio played some soft old song, one my late husband and I used to dance to in the kitchen. I turned it off. I couldn't handle memories right then. I was too full of them already. Every mile I drove, I replayed Michael's words in my mind. "Shut up, Mom." Such small words. But they echoed louder than any scream I'd ever heard. And then the memories came rushing. His first day of school, the time he cried when his goldfish died, how he once told me, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house so you'll never be lonely." I smiled bitterly. He did buy that house. I just didn't realize I wouldn't belong inside it. By noon, I stopped at a small roadside diner, one of those places that look like they belong in another decade. A silver-haired waitress named Patty brought me coffee and pie. She smiled kindly and asked, "Traveling far?" I hesitated. Then I said softly, "I'm not sure yet." She nodded like she understood without needing to know. Maybe she did. Older women often carry the same invisible stories in their eyes. I looked around. People laughed, talked, ate. No one knew me. No one expected me to serve, to listen, to apologize for existing. For the first time I was just me. Felt strange. And beautiful. I took out my husband's old photo from my purse. Him smiling in that faded blue shirt. "You'd tell me to be strong, wouldn't you, Richard?" I whispered. "Well, I'm trying." That night, I checked into a small roadside motel. The wallpaper was peeling, and the air smelled faintly of old carpet, but it felt safe. I sat on the bed, looking at the small bag of things I'd brought. A few clothes, a toothbrush, some cash, and my memories. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I slept without waiting for anyone to need me. No one called my name. No one sighed in irritation. No one said, "Shut up." Just silence. Peaceful, heavy silence. The next morning I woke up early. I stood in front of the mirror and studied the woman staring back at me. She looked fragile, but her eyes were alive again. There was something fierce there, like a small flame that refused to die. "So," I whispered to her reflection, "you've spent your whole life loving others. Maybe now it's time to love yourself." And that became my new rule. Over the next few days I drove with no map, just following where the wind took me. I visited small towns, watched sunsets, talked to strangers, and cried sometimes in parking lots when the memories hit too hard. But I didn't turn back. One evening I stopped at a beach. The waves roared like thunder, the wind tangled my hair, and the sky bled orange and pink. I sat there, barefoot in the sand, hugging my knees like a child. I told the ocean everything I never got to say. How I gave up my youth to raise a man who forgot where he came from. How I prayed every night that he'd be happy. And how I'd trade every tear just to hear him say, "I'm sorry" once. The ocean didn't answer. But the wind brushed against my face, and for a second, I imagined it was my husband's hand, telling me he was proud of me for finally standing up. I started writing that night, in a little notebook I bought from a gas station. I wrote letters I'd never send. "Dear Michael, I hope one day you understand that I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I started loving myself too." Writing became my therapy, my confession booth, my way of breathing again. I filled pages with memories, some painful, some precious. Every line I wrote loosened the chains around my heart a little more. Weeks passed, and with every sunrise I became someone new. Someone lighter, calmer, braver. I found a small rental room in a quiet town by the water. The landlady, Mrs. Collins, was a retired teacher with a kind smile. She didn't ask questions, she just said, "You look like you need peace." She was right. I did. I started baking again. Reading again. Sitting by the window with tea, watching the world move without me needing to fix it. Sometimes I missed Michael so much it hurt to breathe. But then I'd remind myself, he made his choice. And so did I. One morning, as I was watering the small flowers on the porch, Mrs. Collins asked, "Do you ever regret leaving?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. "Every mother regrets walking away," I said softly. "But sometimes regret and relief look exactly the same." She smiled knowingly and said, "That's how you know you did the right thing." And maybe she was right. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I didn't feel unwanted. Felt human again. That night, I sat by the window watching the rain fall. I thought about Michael, where he was, whether he noticed I was gone. Did he check the guest room? Did he realize the car was missing? Or was I already erased? A chapter he'd closed and never opened again. I sighed, holding my husband's photo close to my heart. Maybe one day, I whispered, he'll remember who I really was. But even if he never did, I was learning to live for myself again. And that, my dear, is something I never thought I'd say. It had been almost 3 months since I left that house. 3 months since I heard my son's voice. 3 months since I stopped being someone's mother and started learning how to just be me. My days had settled into quiet little patterns. Morning walks by the ocean, tea at noon, writing in my notebook at night. Sometimes I'd catch myself humming softly while folding laundry or baking muffins for Mrs. Collins. It wasn't joy exactly. It was peace. And peace, I realized, is much harder to find than happiness. But even peace has its shadows. Every night before bed I would glance at my phone, the same old phone with cracks on its screen, hoping to see a message from him. Nothing. Not even a missed call. At first I told myself he was angry. Then I told myself he was busy. But deep down I feared the truth. Maybe he didn't care that I was gone. Still, a mother's heart doesn't stop waiting. We're foolish like that, always waiting for the sound of love to find its way back home. One rainy evening, I sat by the window watching the drops race down the glass. My notebook was open, half filled with words I couldn't finish. Then my phone buzzed. For a second my heart froze. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, staring at it like it might break me all over again. And then, answered. Mom! That voice. That single word. Cracked, hesitant, and full of something I hadn't heard in years, remorse. I didn't speak at first. Couldn't. My throat tightened and tears welled in my eyes. Mom, it's me. Michael. I know, I whispered. There was silence. The kind that feels heavier than words. Then he said, I came by the house last week. You weren't there. Lisa said you left. The kids. They keep asking where Grandma went. Closed my eyes. The mention of the children stung the most. I missed their little hands, their laughter, the way they'd run to me with drawings that never quite looked like anything. I just needed some space, I finally said. From me. From the hurt, I replied quietly. He exhaled shakily. Mom, I'm sorry. That night, I don't know why I said what I said. I was stressed, tired, angry. But not at you. You told me to shut up, Michael. My voice trembled, but I said it anyway. Do you know how small those words made me feel? After everything I gave up for you, I felt like I didn't exist anymore. There was a long pause. I heard him sniffle softly on the other end. You're right. I was cruel. I thought you'd just get over it like always. You've forgiven me my whole life. But when I saw your room empty, it hit me. I could almost see him, sitting in that house, maybe holding his head in his hands, realizing what he'd done. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he whispered. Maybe not, I said softly. But you deserve to learn from it. We stayed on the phone for nearly an hour that night. He told me about the kids, about work, about how quiet the house felt without me. I listened, but I didn't rush to comfort him. Mothers always rush. We heal everyone before ourselves. But this time I needed him to sit with the ache. Before hanging up, he said, Please come home, Mom. The kids miss you. Lisa misses you. I miss you. Closed my eyes. 4 years, that's all I ever wanted to hear. But now, the word home didn't mean what it used to. I'll think about it, I said gently. But I'm not ready yet. He sounded disappointed but didn't argue. And when the call ended, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time I had spoken my truth without fear. The next morning, Mrs. Collins found me on the porch with a cup of tea. She smiled and said, You look lighter today. He nodded. My son called. Her face softened. And I looked out at the ocean. The waves were gentle that morning, like they were listening. "He said he's sorry," I whispered. "But sometimes sorry isn't enough, is it?" She shook her head. "No. But it's a start." And she was right. It was a start, the first tiny crack in the wall between us. A few days later I received a letter. Handwritten, shaky, full of cross-outs and messy ink. It was from Michael. "Mom, I know I hurt you. I've been thinking about that night every single day. You didn't deserve it. You were just trying to be part of my life, and I pushed you away. I don't know if you'll ever come back, but I want you to know that I'm changing. I've started therapy. I'm trying to be a better father, a better man, and maybe someday a better son. Love, Michael." I pressed the letter against my heart. Tears fell quietly down my face. Not the painful ones this time, but the kind that heal. That night, as the stars lit the sky, I whispered to the wind, "Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Richard. Maybe it's about letting go of the pain that keeps us frozen." For the first time in years I felt something soft in my chest, hope. Not for him to change, but for me to stay free, even if he did. I remember waking up that morning with a strange feeling. Not sadness, not joy, just calm. The ocean breeze slipped through my curtains, carrying the smell of salt and lavender. I brewed my tea, sat on the porch and watched the sunrise. And for the first time since that awful night, I didn't feel broken. Felt whole. As I sat there, I looked at Michael's letter again. The paper was wrinkled from my tears, but every word was carved into my heart. He was trying, and that mattered. But trying doesn't erase pain. Trying doesn't undo years of silence, of taking a mother's love for granted. I sipped my tea and whispered to myself. Sometimes love means walking away, and sometimes it means walking back, but only when you're ready. That day I decided to visit, not to move back, not to forgive everything, just to see. To look at the faces that once made my house a home and see if healing could live there again. When I reached the house, my heart raced like a young girl's. The driveway was the same, the porch light still flickered, and the rose bush I planted years ago had bloomed wildly, almost as if it was waiting for me. I stood there for a long time before I knocked. The door opened and there he was, my son, Michael. His eyes looked tired but softer. He didn't say a word. He just stepped forward and hugged me. Not the quick, distracted hugs he used to give, but one that said everything he couldn't. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. "For all of it." I held him for a moment, feeling the weight of every lost year between us. Then I said softly, "I forgive you, Michael. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I'm choosing peace over pain." He nodded, his voice breaking. "I understand." When I walked inside, the kids ran toward me, laughing, shouting, "Grandma!" as if I had just returned from a magical adventure. Their tiny arms wrapped around me, and for a second, I forgot everything that had happened. Because sometimes, love through a child's eyes can heal wounds even words can't touch. Lisa joined us, tears in her eyes. "We've missed you so much," she said. "I've missed you too, dear." We sat together, the children showing me their drawings and silly dances. And in that warm, messy, imperfect chaos, I realized something. This house didn't need me to be the old version of myself. It needed me as I was now, a woman who finally knew her worth. Later that evening, as the kids slept and the house grew quiet, Michael sat beside me. We really talked for the first time in years. He told me about his anger, his struggles, his guilt. And I told him about my loneliness, my silence, and the moment I finally walked away. There were tears. There were apologies. But most of all, there was truth. He looked at me and said, "You know, Mom, when you left, it broke something in me. But maybe that's what I needed. Maybe I needed to be broken to finally see you." I smiled faintly. Sometimes it takes losing love to understand how sacred it is. He nodded slowly. "I want you to know I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know the door will always be open. Not because you're my mother, but because I finally see you as a person too." That was the moment my heart healed. Not because he apologized, but because he understood. When I left that night, the moon was high and the air cool. Michael stood by the door, watching me with eyes that finally looked like his father's, gentle and kind. Before I got into my car, he said, "I love you, Mom." I turned back, smiled through my tears and said, "I love you too, son. Always." And I meant it. Now, sitting here telling you this story, I want you to remember something. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's growing up. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's self-respect. And sometimes the strongest love is the one that sets you free. I didn't go back to live in that house again. But I visit often. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. And every time I leave, Michael hugs me a little tighter. Every time he says, "Drive safe, Mom." Every time he means it. Do I regret walking away that night? No. Because that was the night I found myself. And now, when I look at my reflection, the silver hair, the lines around my eyes, I see a woman who loved deeply, lost painfully, and still chose to forgive. So if you're listening to me right now, and your heart feels heavy, if someone made you feel small or unworthy, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep their peace. You deserve the kind of peace that doesn't depend on someone else's kindness. And that is the story of the night my son told me to shut up, and the woman I became when I finally stood up.